with an overview of transportation funding. Let's hear from the LAO. Welcome.
Thank you. Anthony Simbal from the LAO. The sergeants will be passing out a handout. You did it. Okay. Your staff asked us just to provide a brief overview of transportation funding, so I'll be speaking from the handout. If you turn to the first page of the handout following the cover sheet, we just provide just sort of a big picture of estimated total funding for transportation for the state in 2015-16. As you can see from the information there, we estimate that about $28 billion in transportation funding will be available from all levels of government. As shown in pie chart, about half of this funding will come from local governments, primarily from local sales taxes, transit fares, development impact fees, and property taxes. In terms of the remaining half, about 1/4 will come from the federal government, primarily from federal excise taxes on gasoline. And the remaining 1/4 comes from various state revenue sources, primarily excise taxes on gasoline. In addition to the amount of funds shown in the pie chart, the state also receives transportation funding from other sources, primarily from vehicle registration fees to support the California Highway Patrol and Department of Motor Vehicles. If you turn to the next page, we focus primarily on the different sources of the state transportation revenues. So on page 2, as you can see, as the bar graph shows, state transportation revenues have generally increased. There's been some fluctuation over the years from about $3.5 billion in 1990-2000 to about $6.6 billion is what's estimated in 2015-16. These state transportation revenues come from 3 main sources: excise taxes on gas, vehicle weight fees, and sales and excise taxes on diesel fuel. As you also see in the figure, the last couple of years, we've also had a portion of cap and trade revenue for transportation, as you know, particularly for the high-speed rail project. Turning to the final page of the handout, just provides an overview of the governor's budget for the various transportation programs and departments under the State Transportation Agency. In total, for 15-16, the governor proposes a total of $17.6 billion. This table just highlights the major programs from the major funding sources. Just 2 things that kind of stand out in terms of changes. The first is you can see there's a big increase for High-Speed Rail Authority. This just is based on increased expenditures in the budget year for the project as the project moves forward. And second, if you look at the bottom of the table, the transit assistance, there's a reduction there of about $472 million. That pretty much reflects completion of projects that were funded from one-time funds from Proposition 1B. So that kind of gives you a general overview.
All right, I appreciate that. Why don't we have, let's see, pardon? Yeah, let's move directly to the Secretary and of the department and go right into the informational items. We have a couple of them. First, the Secretary for Transportation and the Department of Transportation, and we'll deal with the issue of Caltrans reform. So, welcome.
Great. I should know how to do this. Brian Annis, I'm the Undersecretary of the State Transportation Agency, and I'm joined by Kome Ajise, who's the Chief Deputy Director at Caltrans. And Madam Chair and members, thank you certainly for the opportunity to be here today to testify. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that today is also the Caltrans Worker Memorial. 183 Caltrans workers have lost their lives on the jobs over the many decades the department's been around. So today we do honor those fallen workers and rededicate ourselves to increasing safety on our highways for state workers, contractors, and the traveling public. And in fact, that's where Secretary Kelly and Director Doherty are right now.
And I appreciate your mentioning that fact. It's not an easy job, nor is it often it's a job of high risk, but it's absolutely critical to the economic well-being of the state and the safety of the users. So we certainly, although we're here, I'm glad that you mentioned it and that this committee would like to recognize those that have lost their lives or been injured, and thank those for their efforts, and condolences to the families who have had their lives changed.
Well, thank you for those words, and we'll take that back certainly.
I'm going to take this moment to form a quorum. Please call the roll.
Senator Wolk.
Here. Here.
Senator Nielsen.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. All right, please continue. We've just begun, Senator Nielsen.
Sure. Well, your staff agenda does a good job explaining the background on the Caltrans reform efforts and detailing some of the progress to date. So instead of reiterating any of that overview, just wanted to make a few points. Caltrans has historically been a leader in highway construction, seismic and roadway safety, and management of Amtrak intercity rail. However, with state policy changes, we also require the department to be a leader in support of increased transit and active transportation use, better land use, and supporting the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals and other environmental goals. The mission, goals, and performance measures and targets that Caltrans has now adopted will help guide the department in addressing those broader charges. I have copies of the new strategic management plan, which Director Doherty recently adopted. This is the work product of literally thousands of Caltrans employees as Director Doherty surveyed employees for how to best measure and achieve progress toward the new goals. So I have these if the sergeant can distribute them. Second point, the legislature has been very supportive of reforms at Caltrans, and I want to thank you for that. In prior budgets, the legislature has created the Active Transportation Program, directed cap and trade proceeds to transit, infill development, and affordable housing, as well as bike and pedestrian improvements. As an example, in the policy area, last year the legislature passed SB 486, which requires the establishment of a formal asset management plan to guide the state's operation and protection program, or the SHOP program for highway preservation, and also requires that the new interregional transportation strategic plan be redone to align with current state goals. Finally, we do have much work ahead to continue to modernize Caltrans and its programs. Much of that future work is dependent on legislative partnership. As we look to how to improve our highway systems in a cost-effective way that is supportive of our goals, we're emphasizing a fix-it-first approach, including both the preservation of existing highways and bridges and also optimizing operation of existing highway capacity. The governor called in his January budget for new transportation revenues to address deferred highway maintenance. Both houses of the legislature are now coming forward with some funding proposals. Senator Bell, of course, came forward yesterday with a proposal. We have before the budget subcommittee today some supportive proposals as well. We have a proposal for fleet greening for Caltrans equipment, a proposal to increase maintenance and operations staff to better maintain and enhance our transportation management systems, such as ramp meter lights that control the flow of traffic. We also have proposed budget bill language to increase the capacity of highway HOV lanes by converting and expanding some of these lanes to include toll payers as well. This can reduce congestion and also provide funding for maintenance and even transit expansion on some corridors. Lastly, we have a proposal to streamline the relinquishment of certain Main Street highways to local control when there is state and local agreement to do that. So I'll conclude there, and myself and Chief Deputy Director Komei Ajise are happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. I think there were a couple questions that were included in the staff report that I'd like to specifically focus on. And that's number 4. As part of your reform effort, have you identified any responsibilities that should be devolved to the counties?
Sure. Well, let me throw a few things out, and Komei may want to add. One of the things we've been working on is trying to improve the partnership on some of the local road and state highways that act as local road design issues. And this was mentioned in your staff agenda, the adoption of the National Association of City Transportation Official Guidelines that are supportive of creating safer bike routes and innovative designs for improving pedestrian access and so forth. That's something we're tackling in a few ways. We have endorsed those standards, but we find even on the local roads, there's some resistance of local officials of adopting designs that aren't in the Caltrans design manual for legal liability and other concerns. So we're working on updating the manual and also educating local engineers on how design exceptions can be made to be legally sound, how they can be documented to show that they're in the public safety interest and again, be legally strong. So that is something we're working on with the local roads as well as those local state highways. And to facilitate that, Caltrans has delegated additional design exception decisions down to the district level so that things don't need to be negotiated twice. They can be settled locally, and those projects can move forward quicker.
That's definitely a good thing.
Sure.
Are there questions? Senator Nielsen?
Yes, thank you very much. Late fees are being used for debt service payments instead of transportation. Now, I'm kind of familiar with this, and as part of the Budget Committee, you know, when this sort of thing was supported, it was because of the deficit and the challenges that we faced as a state. It was never my intention, and I would hope my colleagues, that this did not become a way of life. Are we always going to continue to use late fees for debt service?
Steve Wells, Department of Finance. The current policy is that we use the late fees to pay only transportation debt service. So we've adopted the policy essentially that those are expenses of, you know, of transportation to be borne by transportation. So you know, currently the plan is to continue to use late fees to pay, again, only for transportation-related debt service.
Well, I might have some arguments with that because it just affirms that, you know, once you let something happen in government, it never dies. And that was intended to be just for that one moment in time. And I will argue that that is drawing money away from what could be going into roads and could come from other sources. Now, Caltrans is sort of broadening the different modes of, quote, transportation. But it seems to me we're still relying on the tax burden falling on the people who use the roads to pay for these other modes. Isn't there a Prop 26 concern about that, or does that make sense? Is that really justified?
Sure. Well, I can, I'm trying to think through all the various funding programs we have, Senator Nelson. I mean,
You have so many. Yeah, and my point is, I think that's kind of expanding, and there may be noble purposes and intent, but maybe some of the other people who, or whatever benefits from those other modes, they should be paying as well, not just our drivers.
Maybe I could say two things. One is that certainly the more successful we are with transit service, the closer you get to fare box recovery of the transit riders, covering, you know, closer to 100% of the cost of operating the service. The Northeast Corridor for Amtrak, I understand, is very close to that 100% fare box recovery for the operating cost. Some of our Amtrak services that California subsidizes are over 50%, I think some perhaps approaching 70%, and you know, we would hope that those over time could get up to 100%. However, you know, in other areas, it does make sense to fund some transit improvements as well. Certainly we're funding road improvements with some non-user fees, sales tax at the local level, other things. So there are some opportunities to improve transit and you know, have those multimodal benefits that could include some congestion relief to the extent you're moving a portion of people off the highways and into transit. So it is an integrated transportation system, and I do believe it makes sense to consider the modes as an integrated system.
Well, understand that this will continue to be an item on my mind, and I'll probably be raising it for a number of years. These the speed lanes, or the high, let's see, high vehicle, what do you call it, the HOV lanes? Yeah, lanes. You know, this is a great thing, but I've heard an awful lot of complaints about them, including colleagues in the legislature who travel those freeways that are most congested more than I do, not being real happy with the expansion of these. They've been around a long time, but I think the point I'm making is that they're not just famously popular with everybody. So have some reservations. I'm interested in your concept of turning things over to local government, all right? Every time the state does that, we tend to turn it over to local government, but with all the fetters, all the mandates, all the requirements. And your conversation talked about working with the counties. I believe I heard you say it, I'm paraphrasing, but that they have to work with, with Caltrans. They work with Caltrans. And so we're going to turn something over to them, but okay, this is what Caltrans requires, you have to do it. Well, what about asking local government how they want it to be done? And let that guide rather than what Caltrans says. Is that a part of the deal?
If I can just address.
Please, sir.
Nielsen. I think you're speaking specifically about relinquishment as part of what you were alluding to. In relinquishing roads to our local partners, it's typically a mutual arrangement. We can't relinquish roads they don't want to take. And in the discussions that we typically have with local agencies, we're relinquishing roads that they can do something different with in terms of land use around the roads. That will probably not necessarily be something that we would have had a chance to have an oversight on in terms of when a road goes through a community. Communities tend to have different intents for what that road serves. When it's a state highway, the state highway tends to serve interregional travel. When it stops to serve that, then it's getting to the point where it might better serve the community to take the road on. And to take the road on, there's a mutual agreement that's developed. And that culminates in an agreement that we sign with the jurisdiction, the respective jurisdiction. So we don't really, we're not in a position to force a relinquishment on anybody. It's usually by mutual agreement. Sometimes when we do that, we have to bring the road to a certain level of condition before they will take it, and they would require that, and we would do that. And other times we would pay to have them take it, so they would do with the road whatever they wish to do with it.
I like that latter part. You'd pay to have them take it. I'd like to, keep track of that. Well, I'm raising some issues that I think are ongoing of concern, and we'd like to pay attention and have that dialogue with you, and we'll be watching after that in the budget. I think the fundamental point that I will make is that as much of these monies should really be going into streets and roads as absolutely possible, and they are hugely neglected, and that's really important. Thank you.
All right. If there are no more comments, that was an informational item, and there isn't any action to be taken. However, staff suggests that perhaps there might be public comment. I would take brief public comment at this time because we have a long agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Keith Dunn here for the Self-Help Counties Coalition. I just wanted to reassure the Senator and this committee that the Self-Help Counties, we have been actively working with the department and the state agency in not only setting up agreed upon principles for tolling facilities, but also on the relinquishment and other issues. We have a very strong partnership, and that's how we view our relationship with the department and the state agency. We have active conversations, and when we disagree, we sit down and work them out. So it's been ongoing for the last few years, but it's been very productive. I think the reforms have been embraced, and I think that we're working towards a great solution on some of the issues that have been identified in the report and other with this committee. So I just wanted to kind of reassure you that the counties, from our perspective, we have had a very positive and growing relationship with the department and also with the agency. So.
Thank you. Next, please. Who sat down next? Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Jeannie Ward-Waller with the California Bicycle Coalition. I just want to thank you for the attention on this issue today and highlight the new Caltrans strategic plan and commend Caltrans on that. I think particularly we support the goals around mode shift towards doubling walking, tripling bicycling, doubling transit, reducing VMT. These all have a great nexus with our state climate goals. And so we would just love your attention on how the changes in the budget will support those goals, such as the state active transportation program that we've been working very hard on along with Caltrans. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, please.
Good morning, Senators. Tim Kremens, International Union of Operating Engineers. On the issue of road relinquishment, we have members who represent Caltrans maintenance workers inside the department, and under that scenario, we may lose some of our collective bargaining jurisdictions. So we want to work with the department, and they've offered to help, but I do support the committee's action to send it back to Senate Trans. And thought was maybe this could be part of our collective bargaining process. We are opening negotiations next week, or some control language. Other times the department, for instance, does put stuff out to vendors. We do have a provision in our collective bargaining agreement. They check in with us. So I don't know whether a checkoff system, but hopefully we can have some discussions with the administration on this, because that is our members' work. Second item, Senator Nielsen, I would real quick mention debt service from late fees. I applaud him for bringing that up. Transportation funding is unique in that regard, and that it pays its own debt service as opposed to general fund. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Public comment?
I'm Wendy Alfson with California Walks. I just wanted to echo the comments that were previously made, commending Caltrans for the new management strategic plan, and also the agency for bringing not only Caltrans, but the Office of Traffic Safety and all the other transportation agencies, departments, and work of the state together to make all of this happen. And I wanted to say that one of the priorities there is the fix-it first road maintenance, and that includes not just the state highway, but the entire road system. And under that, we look forward to complete streets, because the road does include the entire public right-of-way. And with regard to the maintenance workers who are all here in the Capitol today, I just wanted to point out that we in California built a system that excluded pedestrians from the roadway in order to make it safer for drivers. And every time a maintenance worker, and I forgot, maintenance workers can't do their work from their trucks for the most part, and they are pedestrians on the road, and that's when they're getting hurt and killed, just as all of our other pedestrians are. Thank you for supporting our work. And it's great to work collaboratively with you and your local districts to advance safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the vote-only items in front of us. We have 3 of them. I'll take them individually. First, 2660, which is a proposal for the legal program zero-based budget. Baseline is 270.6 and 119.7. And the recommendation is approve as budgeted. Please, is there a motion? All right, it's been moved. Any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
3-0, that item is approved. Moving on to 2720, which is the Highway Patrol, Item 1, the relocation of Chico and Stockton area offices. The proposal is the governor proposes a $5.8 million augmentation from the motor vehicle account to complete the relocation of Chico and Stockton area offices to new build-to-suit facilities. The relocation was approved in past year's budgets. The recommendation is to approve as budgeted. Is there a motion? So moved. It has been moved. Public comment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Aye. Senator Pavley?
All right, that is approved 3-0. Moving on to item 2600, This is the goals and performance measures. The proposal, the CTC requests $136,000 for a 2-year limited-term position to support the expanded role of the CTC in developing and adopting and monitoring the State Highway Operation and Protection Program, the California Transportation Plan, the state's Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, and the Interregional Improvement Program, as required by SB 486. The recommendation is to approve as budgeted. Is there a motion? That has been moved by Senator Nielsen. Public comment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Senator Wolk?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? Senator Pavley?
All right, that has been approved 3-0. We'll now move on to some discussion and vote items. First, Caltrans come back. Fleet greening for air quality. All right, who's on? Welcome.
Madam Chair and members, Kome Ajise again on behalf of the department. Department requests a permanent increase of about $12 million in state highway account funds for fleet greening and ongoing compliance with air quality regulations. This request is part of the department's proactive efforts to reduce diesel emissions and improve air quality by greening our aging fleet, and would also enable us to reach compliance with the CARB requirements.
All right. LAO, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. James Hacker, LAO. We would recommend approving this item as budgeted, and we would like to clarify a couple of points on it. First, this proposal is to help Caltrans comply with 2 ARB regulations, the in-use off-road diesel engine regulations, as well as the air toxic control measure regulations. Both of these set fleet-wide emission standards. The in-use off-road is already in place, but ratchets every year, so the standards decrease each year, or get stricter rather. And the air toxic control measure sets fleet-wide emission standards for portable diesel engines by 2020. Caltrans has indicated that absent corrective action, they won't comply with these regulations by 2018 for the in-use off-road diesel vehicles, and by 2020 for the air toxic control measures. And as it typically takes Caltrans about 2 years to procure new equipment, they're going to need to start procuring this equipment as soon as possible in order to reach that compliance deadline.
All right. Any comments from the, yes, Senator Nielsen. No.
Well, I'll note that I am sympathetic with Caltrans' plight, but it certainly harkens to the plight of everybody else who has got to comply with these CARB regulations and their costs. Is it your understanding that as CARB changes its regs, I'll give you an example, the diesel retrofit, okay? If you retrofit, then do you have an assurance from CARB that next year or within 3 years or 5 years they won't change that and cause you to retrofit again? Can you be assured that your fix, so to speak, is going to last for a while? Does CARB give you that assurance?
Senator, I think in the main what we're asking for is actually to buy more compliant equipment, not so much retrofit, where we have a sense of where the regulations are going and what the requirements are over time, and the equipment fleet that we're looking to grow into is in compliance with that. And so we have a good sense that we'll be in line with what regulations are ahead of us as we all move together towards attaining state goals.
I wish the private sector had the degree of confidence that you harbor there. Does that mean then that your long-range, say, fleet plan is predicated on phasing out older equipment and buying new, or are you talking about retrofitting or other things?
Well, in our case, because of the life cycle that we've attained with our fleet, we would be looking to replace, because most of our equipment are beyond useful life, and so the retrofit might not be as cost-effective in the first place. And secondarily, the technology that's in place and that we're anticipating necessitates us to go out into the market and actually buy what's current and allows us to meet the the impending requirements that we see in front of us.
So you do have a, if you will, a retirement schedule, such and such a type equipment is, you know, a grader, 5 years or 3 years? Is that how you go, or do you have other hours on the engine? Is that how you base it, or miles driven, or what do you base it on?
Well, we actually use them until we know that we've attained, I mean, on average, our equipment is about 23 years old. We'll attain about 23 years old on average by 2023. And so the life serve, without question, we would have passed that by the time we replace our equipment. And so what we are looking to do is to actually bring on equipment that is current technology that meets the requirements of the day.
Understood. You had something, sir?
We do have, Caltrans does have an equipment list that is updated with the appropriate information, its age, whether it has miles or hours of use. All of those factors go into determining, and they keep track of like what level of maintenance it's starting to get to. And when the higher the maintenance level, the higher the hours, the higher it moves up on the list to be replaced first. So the things that are going to be replaced here, many of them are, you know, very old or high on those maintenance levels to begin with, and that's where we're going to start the efforts.
All right, thank you.
Senator Pavley.
Just a comment on this. Of course, I'm supportive of, as the fleet turns over, that you make these recommendations to cleaner vehicles, especially as relates to diesel particulate matter. Central Valley and the LA areas and non-attainment areas as far as air quality, we risk the loss of federal funding if we do not start making a difference. And so this is really important from a health perspective, especially the geography of the Central Valley traps in the air and all the combination of trucks and Caltrans equipment. We all need to do our share in making thoughtful purchases to make it cleaner. And at the end of the day, hopefully they operate more efficiently as well and perhaps last longer. But the exposure to diesel particulate matter is a real problem with public health, particularly affecting children. 1 out of every 5 children in Fresno is asthmatic, carries an inhaler to school, and the elderly. And so thank you to Caltrans for doing their fair share on that. And I had another comment. I know this is on air quality, and I'm very supportive of your moving forward on the transition of your vehicles and trucks. I chair the water committee, so I was just curious, since Caltrans is here, are there changes in landscaping patterns relating to the freeways that are any of you prepared to talk about that? Just wondered, fair share on the drought, or whether capture and reusing stormwater is something you could do to use it on your.
Yeah, absolutely, Madam Senator. We actually have been actively involved in conservation. Most of our freeway plantings are in the low to very low levels. What we're working on very actively is on watering and the use of water. We're trying to get as much as possible that our irrigation is from non-potable water to the extent, recycled water, to the extent that we have access to those sources. And beyond that, we're also, in the last year, we've reduced, I think we went down about 33% in our, we went beyond the 25% requirement and attained about 33% reduction in the use of water.
Well,
and we're now.
Fine line, because a whole bunch of dead trees and landscaping, not just an aesthetic problem, but potential for fires and things like that is a problem. So that recycled water, do you work with local governments who are putting in lines to extend it to the Caltrans right away?
We work with all of the purveyors of waters to try and get access to whatever is available to us that makes the most sense for the location. We've transitioned to where we actually moving towards a 50% reduction in our use of water. And where we didn't have recyclable water, we're looking for access to recyclable water. We've cut down all of our watering of turf and just focused on essential vegetation, like trying to maintain some stewardship on the trees that we've planted. But beyond that, we've really cut back in the use of water.
You may want to connect with the people that are expending monies under Prop 1. There's a huge amount of recycled, money for recycled water programs and installation of purple pipes. And finally, if I may, it's in the green category in general. Have you increased your litter pickup? We have freeways through Southern California that are just awash in trash, especially on windy days. I mean, it looks like a third world country quite frequently.
It's an
And
ongoing.
homeless and shopping carts, and you have to see it. It's just really quite.
Yeah, that's an ongoing problem for, I think, for us statewide. It's one that we have an extensive program to pick up litter within the constraints of our resources. We've tried to engage volunteer organizations as well in the Adopt a Highway program. In fact, I think this month we're gonna spend some time on a public campaign on litter to bring some awareness to the amount of litter. But it's one that we are chasing with all the resources that we have available to us.
It's not just aesthetic, it gets off the Caltrans right away and into the storm drains.
It's a water quality problem, yes.
It's a Clean Water Act problem where local cities are penalized. But had the budget been increased at all since during the recession relating to litter pickup?
I think my understanding is we're spending upwards of about $40 million in that range, tens of millions of dollars on litter pickup. It's more than anybody would imagine you would need for litter pickup. So we're spending as much as we can without compromising some other essential services. It's really not necessarily your top priority, but at the same time, it's one that we have to get to because of its implications for safety and water quality.
Partnership to deal with the problem on a windy day like this. I mean, we're talking about unbelievable loads of trash.
We're pretty.
Lucky to see someone out, once every 3 to 4 months.
Yes.
And if you're in an urban area with constant commuters and other things that blow off trucks, it's a problem.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of our Adopt a Highway program and working with jurisdictions to enforce garbage movement. Debris on the highway comes from most of that. So we're working on all fronts to stem the litter problem.
We'll have to work on it. All right, thank you.
All right, there is a motion, no, there is a recommendation to approve this item, fleet greening for air quality, as budgeted. Is there a motion? All right, it has been moved. Public comment? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Senator Wolf?
Aye.
Senator Nielsen? No. Senator Pavley?
All right, that has been approved, 2-1.